Hi there, Willford here, and this is the result of my Movember this year. When this video gets uploaded, it'll probably be December already, but I promise you, this thing will go clean off on December 1st. Stop beard-shaming me! And I'm going to be your teacher for today. Teacher of what, you ask? Music production, you dummy. That's gonna be my intro for the series. Well, you might have already heard of the term music theory, the spooky, mysterious term that tends to scare off beginner producers by the masses. Let's change that today. Before we do though, first some disclaimers. Disclaimer 1. I am not even pretending to be an expert in this field. I'm a 19-year-old bedroom producer who wants to make some more advanced knowledge more accessible to the general public. Everything I'm going to be teaching you today, I simply learned through experience and a lot of YouTube videos. I am human though, so I'll probably get some stuff wrong in the making of this video. I'm going to be leaving a notes thing in the description down below where I'll put all my corrections to this video for future reference. Oh, there goes my light. Disclaimer 2, I don't think there is a wrong way of making music. There is only tools and tricks you can learn to use. I'll be presenting a lot of tools and tricks in this series, but if you think you have a better way of doing something, do it your way. As long as you like the music you make, who am I to tell you you're doing it wrong? Okay, so now that's all out of the way, now it's time to get it on. Today I'm going to be tackling one of the most overcomplicated topics out there. Music theory. If you've come to this video to learn how to read sheet music, you've come to the wrong video. I'm mainly going to be talking about how notes fit together and the basic structure surrounding that. I'm going to put a link in the description that leads to the final script of this video so you can read along if you'd like. I've also provided a time code in the description to some points in the video so you can skip along and find a topic that you might be more interested in. But I really advise you to watch the entire video because I really tried to make this as information packed as I possibly could. Who knows, you might even learn a thing or two about the topics you already knew about. Oh, the light's coming back in. Oh, okay, that was the intro. Let's first take a look at the piano. Oh my god, that joke was not worth it. In my opinion, the piano is the best way to learn what notes can do. How they harmonize, how to make a melody, how to convey an emotion. The white notes on the piano are all labeled by a letter of the alphabet, starting at A and ending at G. If you'd like to know why it ends at G, you can watch this video by Dave from Boy in a Band. He explains it perfectly. It's got something to do with how frequencies behave and how the human ear detects the ratios between them. If you go from one A to the next A, or more generally from one note on a key to the next note with the same name, it's called an octave. After an octave, the piano pattern is repeated. You can see that by the pattern of the black notes. You can go up and down the piano in either full or half steps. A half step is when two notes are right next to each other. So from here to here is a half step. From here to here is a half step, but from here to here is also a half step. When a half step includes two white notes, just like these two, it's called a natural half step. A full step is nothing more or nothing less than two half steps. So from here to here, here to here, and here to here are all full steps. Still easy, right? Okay, let's amp it up a bit. The black notes on the piano are named by what white notes they are right next to. And depending on if it is a half step down or a half step up, they get a symbol which is called an accidental. If a black note is a half step down from a white note, it's called flat and it gets a B accidental. If a black note is a half step up from a white note, it's called sharp and it gets a pound sign accidental, or a hashtag as the youth like to call it these days. You can remember this by thinking of the visual, like if something is flat, it's on the ground or low, and if something is sharp, it's pointing up or higher. So this note right here can be called either a C sharp or a D flat. This note here is either a D sharp or an E flat. And if you believe hard enough, this note here is called a C sharp, 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 sharp. Think about that for a second. Using this logic, you can give each of the 12 notes in an octave a name. That's just step 1. Step 2 is scales. I see a lot of new producers shy away from this term because it seems so ominous, mysterious, and complicated, but it is actually quite simple. To my knowledge, a scale is nothing more and nothing less than a pattern of notes, a half and a whole step separated from each other that sound nice together. That's it. Let's jump into FL to illustrate this. might recognize that tune. It is what is called a major scale. Every scale with the pattern 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, or whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step is called a major scale. This major scale right here has the C as its root note, which means that it is the first note of the major pattern, which is why this scale is called the C major scale, or just C. Like I said, this pattern applies to all major scales. So if I move this up here, this is called the D sharp major scale, this is the G major scale, etc, etc. Minor scales are a little bit more complicated because there are loads of different types of minor scales out there. We are going to be focusing on the most common minor pattern, which is the natural minor scale, and it sounds like this. The pattern of a minor scale is the pattern which forms if you hit all the white notes from A to A. So that means a pattern of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, or whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step. I'm not helping anyone by doing this. The same rules that apply to major scales apply to minor scales as well, as in this one is called the A minor scale, this is a D minor scale, here we have a C minor scale, etc, 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 etc. You might have noticed that the C major scale and the A minor scale consists of the same set of notes, which is all the white notes on the piano. This is because they are what is called relative keys from each other, which means that two keys, one a major and one a minor, share the same set of notes. To give you an idea of what keys should be relative from each other, every third note in a minor key is the root note of its relative major key. Which you can see here, the relative key to A minor is C major, because C is the third note of the A minor scale. By the way, there's also something out there called the chromatic scale, which is basically all the notes, white or black, from one note to the other. Now we can go on to step 3, which is chords and harmonies. Now we've got our scales down, we can start jumping to chords. But to know chords, you need to know intervals first. And to know intervals, you gotta know quality of an interval and number of an interval first. Remember quality, I'm going to discuss numbers first. Interval numbers are basically two notes within the same key that are separated a certain distance from each other. You can take a look at some of those numbers right here in the C major scale. If two notes play the same note, it's called unison. Two notes within the same key that are separated two notes from each other are called second. This is third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and this is an octave. So two notes in the same key that are separated by three notes are called a third, which is exactly what we need to form our first chords. The most basic chord you can make within a key is called a triad, which basically consists of 2/3 intervals stacked on top of each other. As long as the triad fits within the scale, you can safely use it. You can see the difference between major and minor chords when you take a look outside of the scale at the quality of the intervals. A note can be, for instance, be a perfect fifth, which means that it is 7 notes outside of any keys up. So these two notes right here are perfect fifth. A note can also be outside of any scales, a major third or a minor third quality note, which means that it is either 4 notes up for a major third or 3 notes up for a minor third. There's also sustained fourth and sustained second qualities. There's augmented qualities, but you don't need to know anything about them for now. And maybe I didn't research them as much, so yeah. In every simple triad, there is a perfect fifth, a root note, and either a major third or a minor third note, depending on if the chord is a major chord or a minor chord. By the way, once you find this triad of 3 notes that fit within your scale, which is either a major chord or a minor chord, you can move the notes around octaves however you like. It is still the same chord. This right here is what is called an inversion of the C major chord, because I've moved one of the notes into a different octave. This still is an inversion of the C major chord right here. By the way, we know how to make a triad now, but that doesn't stop us from experimenting with other types of harmonies. So for instance, you can make a 7th chord or a 9th chord just by adding like more notes to it. Make it more jazzy. By the way, you might have heard of the 4-chord song by the Axis of Awesome. That 4 chords chord progression, which is used in so many pop songs, is noted down by the following Roman numerals: I, V, VI, IV, which means 1, 5, 6, 4. These numbers refer to the interval of the root note of the chords you're using within a random key. So for instance, if we take C major again, because it's an easy key, this right here would be the 1 in C major. Then if we count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the 5 in C major. This right here would be the 6 in C major, and this down here would be the 4 in C major, which is the Axis of Awesome chord progression. Now that we know that every triad has a perfect 5th note, which we can just move up here, and either a major third or a minor third note, minor, major, we can make a chord progression based on those Roman numerals. Don't stop believing. By the way, it's usual to use the root note of a chord as the bass note of a chord as well. So for this chord progression, the bass would just be C, G, and then an A, F. So it would just be this. And if I use inversions as well, I can make the chord progression a little bit more unified, like this. This is still the same chord progression. It only has, it doesn't even have different root notes. It just inverts some of the chords within the chord progression, which makes it a little bit more uniform. But something interesting you can do with chords and bass notes is, if I take for instance a D major chord, which you can see here, perfect 5th and a major 3rd, I would usually put a D note underneath to make it a full D chord. You would normally use a D bass note, but you can use any different note that you'd like within the scale. It will give a different feel to the chord. For instance, if I put an F sharp here, it gives the chord a completely different feel. You can denote a chord like this by first noting the chord which you're playing, then a slash, and then the note in the bass that you're playing. So this chord right here would be a D over an F sharp. An example of someone using this in the song is Ed Sheeran with Thinking Out Loud. When your legs don't work like they used to before. Okay, that was a lot of information. Are you still following along? If you didn't quite catch something, you might want to rewind right now or take a look at the script. Again, link in the description. These were all the music theory fundamentals that I'm going to be discussing in this video. Now let's start having some fun with it. I already introduced you to the concept of scales, where you have a different pattern of whole and half steps assigned to a name. Now let's take a look at modes, which to my knowledge is just more scales with different names and different patterns. There are 7 modern modes. You have the Ionian mode, which to my knowledge is the same as the major scale. You have the Aeolian mode, which to my knowledge is the same as the natural minor scale we discussed. And then you also have the Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, and Locrian modes. There's a link in the description where you can take a look at all those modes and their whole half-step patterns. Something cool that you can do with these modes is you can apply something called a modal interchange to your chord progression. Okay, so modal interchange is when you take chords out of a mode that runs parallel to the one you're using. So for example, if we take C major or C Ionian and we put C Dorian and C Lydian and C all of the others, all those C's run parallel to each other. Using chords out of those other modes can make for some really interesting chord progressions. Take a listen. I learned this technique from a channel called Native Construct, who explains it 1,000 times better than me. So there will be a link to his video in the card somewhere. But then there is also this shit. People who are so goddamn good at music theory that they do this shit. This is a thing that Jacob Collier and Dodie Clark wrote in what is called the Super Ultra Hyper Mega Meta Lydian mode. Just listen to that.
I don't really know what a super ultra hyper mega meta Lydian scale is, 'cause I take grade 5 theory and that's about it. I'll give you some 3-part and I'll stick to the tonic, but you can do what you want with this.
I listened to that thing about maybe 20 times and I have no idea how they wrote that. That's insane. Oh, wow, this video has already lasted for
a bit over 14
minutes and we've discussed so much stuff. But after all that, and you will basically hear any established music producer say this, but rules are meant to be broken. It's good to know what you can logically do in a situation if you feel stuck in a track. But to my experience, music theory is more like a guideline, just like anything in the creative world, really. It's good to know the rules, but mostly so you know how to accurately break them. So that's about it from me for today. what did you think about this first episode? Like, what in particularly did you like, or were there things that you would love to have seen differently? Just leave a comment, I read through all of them. I'd love to know what you guys thought, because as you might have guessed, a lot of work went into this video, in the script writing, in my research. Like, honestly, I learned a lot more about this topic while researching it, so I'm down to make more episodes if you guys are. Don't forget to leave a like if you like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye!